Welcome to Shitpost, the weekly dispatch helping you understand the politics, memes, viral videos, conspiracy theories, and all the other things that influence online culture. I'm your extremely online host, Jared Holt, and I'm here to help you make sense of all of this madness. A couple announcements off the top. I'm going to appear on Matt Bender's Doomed podcast this week. I'll be joining him in my first ever live broadcast appearance. It's going to be on his YouTube channel. Keep up with the Shitpost Twitter and the Patreon page to stay in the loop on that. It should be a lot of fun. I'll be discussing quote-unquote classical liberals, the fall of Baked Alaska, perhaps, and a handful of other things that you hear about weekly on Shitpost. I'm also planning the next group chat with any $5 plus pledges to this show. I'm currently looking at a few dates later this month. Please email shtpostpodcast@gmail.com or message me on Patreon to get looped into the next chat. We had a lot of fun last time, and I'm really excited to do it again. And finally, at the end of this month, I'm moving. I got a new apartment in DC that I'm moving into on Memorial Day weekend, and while I'm moving, that means the equipment that I use to produce this podcast will be in the moving van for most of the weekend. So I'm afraid that there won't be a regularly scheduled episode the Monday following Memorial Day weekend, but don't fret, because I'm going to stack up some bonus content to release that weekend that should keep your craving full. As always, you can support this podcast by going to patreon.com/shtpostpodcast. There I post links to the monthly group chat and all that other stuff. Even $1 helps. Anything is welcome. And with that, let's hit them with some news. Social media stardom is a cruel mistress, and it's given us rise to a new muse. I'm talking, of course, about Lil Tay, a 9-year-old girl who is extremely foul-mouthed and has been posting videos of her holding large bills of cash, flexing around different cars, appearing with Gucci Gang members, with Jake Paul, and it's, here's another post from Lil Tay, hyping a fight she had with Bad Baby, who is that girl that you might recognize from Dr. Phil, who made the Cash Me Outside, how about that meme. They're feuding, and this is a video that she also did.
Yo, what's up? This Lil Tay, the youngest flexer of the century. I'm gonna be talking about the fight between me, Vicky, and Bad Baby. Tried to sneak Vicky from the back. Like she tried to punch Vicky. You can't fight properly? You a pussy. She knew that I could smack her auntie and I can destroy her. You were the one that called the cops. The biggest snitch ever. You went on Twitter and tweeted those lies. Back with those Twitter fingers. Bad Baby, you a bitch.
So the craziest part about Lil Tay, aside from the fact that she's 9 years old and is being put up to this, I assume, it's that me and some other journalists I have spoken to, we've all tried to track down like the story of Lil Tay. We've messaged the accounts, we've tried to get in contact with managers, but it's incredibly opaque. One writer I know wanted to interview Lil Tay, wanted to interview Lil Tay's mother, but they wouldn't do an interview unless it was paid. So I guess for a while, this 9-year-old, what'd she say, youngest flexer in the game, I guess it's just going to be a weird mystery. Last week, Facebook held its F8 Developers Conference, where Mark Zuckerberg told audience members that the mobile app for Facebook is getting dating features. The feature, which will only be on the mobile app, is opt-in. So if you don't want to be part of it, you won't be. Zuckerberg insists that the app is not going to be for hookups, because Mark Zuckerberg has apparently never been on a dating website. And as a result of this announcement, Match.com saw its stock nosedive. And I think this is just another example of the overwhelming monopoly that social media companies have been able to create online. And I think further underlines why we need to be holding them to stricter account and potential government regulation. Some of the most popular YouTube creators are bailing on the platform, or at least they're interacting with it much differently than before. YouTube has been working really hard to partner with A-list celebrities, and I think it's starting to become clear that daily vloggers like Logan Paul or Casey Neistat that uploading every day on YouTube is not just unsustainable from like a career perspective, but it's kind of futile because YouTube has been taking these actions to more prominently feature these A-list celebs. And as YouTube becomes more recognizable as a mainstream media platform, these vloggers, they're not just competing against each other, they're also competing against LeBron James or, Tasty, which is like a BuzzFeed offshoot. So a lot of daily vloggers, I think we're going to see them begin to interact with the platform in a much different way. But that's not to say they're going away. Joining me now is Hasan Piker of The Young Turks. He's the creator of a segment called The Breakdown. Hasan, what's up, dude?
What's going on, man? It's Kanye Westgate, and I'm feeling kind of crazy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier today, I think what would finally send me over the edge on this is if that yodeling kid from a couple weeks ago, if he collapsed with Kanye, I'm probably just going to delete every account I have on the internet and go move out to the woods. It's getting to be a bit much, but
I know. And everyone keeps consistently saying, stop talking about this. It's Kanye West. It's a publicity stunt. He just wants your attention. And while it is true that Kanye definitely cares more about Kanye than he cares about anything else, and he's demonstrated that in the past couple of weeks, it's impossible to avoid. And I think it's impossible not to talk about, especially because the impact that it has on millions of people is very real, especially when a Black thought leader, such an important figure, such an important American artist is out there spewing crazy misinformation to, his millions of followers on Twitter, and then it's getting redistributed through media platforms. And I don't even know what the reach is, but I think it deserves to be talked about. I'm a cynical, nihilistic, pompous person as well, usually the media is so foolish. We're talking about how many times Donald Trump goes golfing, but this, I think, has a very real impact on culture, and therefore a very real impact on potentially how people will enter the realm of political discourse for maybe even generations.
Yeah, because Kanye has really picked up a lot of these sort of, I think a lot of people would call it alt-light talking points, some of which have been on Fox News for years. But conservatives haven't had a cultural figure really as prominent as someone like Kanye West that they've been able to latch onto. So this is a huge moment for them, and I agree. I think it's kind of a mistake to look away from something that they think is such a huge victory. It's interesting what they're going to try to do with this, and I think to turn a blind eye to it and dismiss it as just celebrity gossip could be a mistake.
Yeah, especially because Kanye's trajectory and like how he's gone down this rabbit hole, or what like people call red pilling on the internet is kind of fascinating, but also very normal. Like the Kanye is, in the end of the day, an out of touch, apolitical guy largely, and he probably found himself, for one reason or the other, um, going down, and searching for certain things on YouTube or stumbling across certain YouTube videos. And sources closest to Kanye have confirmed that like that's kind of how he stumbled across the Candace Owens video, which kind of got him going down this rabbit hole very quickly of like alt-light figures that range from Candace Owens to meeting with Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens together to like watching Jordan Peterson videos. And it's important because a lot of people are not even as intelligent as Kanye is, and just because they don't have a platform doesn't mean that they aren't following on a similar journey. Not even after Kanye, but before Kanye as well. There's a reason why, especially you guys have been, tracking the right wing movement and the alt right specifically, because they have gained momentum. Because millions of people definitely do agree with some of these ideas. I think they have a really good way of communicating their message and kind of hiding their overarching beliefs within this like new age counterculture way of delivering information. Does that make sense? Am I being a little crazy?
No, that makes sense. I mean, and part of the way that they sort of like conceal these beliefs is they come up with this idea that like social justice warriors and like the Marxist left, whatever the fuck that is, as it exists in any sort of major capacity, it that like one of the key aspects I've seen, at least in the research I've done, when it comes to watching people in this process of getting, as they would say, red pilled, is there some sort of moment where someone will express sympathy or agreement with a thought that's put forward by this like alt-right sphere, and then people turn on them and attack them, and the people that fed them that idea in the first place kind of harp that up as evidence that like this idea of cultural Marxism in the United States or in the Western world at large even is a real thing, and that they are actually getting closer to the truth. And I think because of the scale that Kanye is at, if he expresses some idea, like the first one was as basic as, I like the way Candace Owen thinks, and he just got explosive blowback after that. And I think like what we're seeing is this sort of push-pull of expressing an idea, getting blowback from the idea, and then digging your heels in deeper. But since Kanye is like such a major celebrity, we're seeing the like so-called red pilling process happen at like hyper fast speed.
Yeah, the right has a really good way of taking that message and kind of lighting it on fire and making it seem like the left is completely out of control and completely dictate culture. Now, it isn't to say that mainstream media doesn't have a liberal swing to it. I largely agree with that.
Yeah, same here. I mean,
yeah,
if you just look at it honestly, like,
yeah, that's definitely true. But like to claim certain things, like even saying that capitalism is better than communism on college campuses is not acceptable, which is like a talking point I hear over and over again from alt-right and alt-light speakers. Like, that's a ridiculous notion. We live in a capitalist society.
Yeah, it's insane. You can't go counterculture to like a mainstream thought.
Yeah, they speak these truths, right? These very easily perceived truths as if they are unspeakable in certain places where radical Marxism has kind of created monolithic thought, and they have these coded words for it. And obviously it works because I think the left partially are responsible for it, because we content police all the time, and we do genuinely bring about some form of social progress. Whether it's progressive or regressive is besides the point, but like we are capable of making changes. And if you're some guy in the margins and you're largely apolitical, culture is tangible. It's something that you can understand. So when your favorite TV show gets canceled, or your character, or like someone you adore is fired from a TV show, not saying it's right or wrong, but just saying that that's impactful.
Right.
And then you do think that there is a circular firing squad, or there's a lynch mob on the internet of liberal social justice warriors. And
Yeah.
there are definitely moments where we have kind of lost control of that narrative. And there are points when it does get a little out of hand. And I think the example I used in an earlier video was the Matt Damon one, where he said
Yes.
that
Yes.
there was a spectrum of like bad behavior, and Harvey Weinstein and Al Franken should not be punished in the same exact way because one is obviously worse than the other. Both are bad and both shouldn't exist in society. And everyone was like, fuck you. Shut the fuck up, Matt Damon. You're a guy. You have no business being a part of this conversation. Like that to me makes an overall very good cause look terrible.
Yeah. In another example I saw of that happened, I guess it was over the weekend, early this week, is there was that young woman who wore the
the Chinese
the Chinese dress. It's like, there's a genuine lesson to be had there about like cultural appropriation and stuff, but a Twitter mob doesn't teach that lesson. Like that scares people away from the left.
And then it backfired anyway, because like that went viral and a lot of people picked it up and were like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Why are you bullying this one girl for wearing a Chinese dress? She like just appreciates it. I understand it. I've had a similar thing, similar fiasco, I guess, revolving around a kimono, and I won't get too far into that. But what came out of that whole like viral Chinese dress controversy was that the guy who was leading that cause, the guy whose tweet kind of went viral, turns out was using the N-word with a hard R and had a bunch of like very problematic tweets himself. Now, to me, that speaks more about like how humans are behind closed doors. Speaks to me more about how Twitter is genuinely terrible for our culture, because it's not representative of who we are as people, because like you don't put a lot of thought into what you're going to tweet out in any given moment. And we all do, as humans, we all do have bad thoughts from time to time, or problematic thoughts from time to time. And to punish someone because that thought is now forever on the internet is kind of bad. I do genuinely believe that. And I think a lot of people on the left believe that as well.
There's like a model of redemption missing from the picture. Like you have to let people be able to redeem themselves and like maintain their respect and integrity while they do it. Obviously there's limits to it, but I don't know.
Yeah, and like things can easily be taken out of context and all that stuff, and like it's just it's kind of crazy to me. I think it stems from like the draconian understanding that Americans have in regards to crime and punishment. I think we always look for more punitive measures rather than less. And we don't believe in redemption. We don't believe in rehabilitation. From a systemic perspective, that leads to the recidivism rate the way it is. That leads to our prison system being the way it is, like the worst in the world. But then even from a cultural perspective, I think it rears its head in this way, where you're like shunned from society. You're supposed to be shunned from society for your past actions, without any sort of judgment. So, but like all of this stuff, some of it is good. Not all of it is bad. Some of it is very good that it's happening. And usually the overarching cause is for good things. I've said this so many times when I used to defend Black Lives Matter, and I still do. It's that like there are going to be some bad actors in any movement. It is impossible to have a full scale movement with just good people. But you have to look at the overarching cause, right?
Right.
If the overarching cause is a good thing, like with the Me Too movement, or like with Black Lives Matter, or any other progressive cause, if you believe in the overarching cause, like you can't, you can't just throw the whole cause away just because some people personally affected you, which is something I mentioned with the Matt Damon situation as well. But anyway, we like totally moved away from that. I know. It's just like I wanted to dial it back in with the Kanye stuff, because the latest things that he said was were absolutely nuts. I don't know if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
familiar.
Let's steer it back to Kanye. So I guess all of that is like a setup and a pitch for sort of this like cultural environment that we exist in currently. And whenever you get people like dug in to their heels and they go further down this like quote unquote red pill, rabbit hole, if you will, you end up with people like that are insanely vulnerable to misinformation. And we saw that on display with Kanye today. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah. Yesterday too, when he was talking about today was kind of a tipping point. But yesterday, when he was talking about things that are true or half true, which is another tactic that the alt-right engages in quite frequently, when he was talking about how Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Did you know that? And like that to anyone with more than 4 brain cells is a given and is obvious and shouldn't be new information. And there's a second piece of that puzzle, which if you don't mention, completely turns that statement of truth into misinformation, basically. And then today, when he was talking about how 400 years of slavery seems like a choice, that's when it kind of shifted completely. Like he lost control of that narrative completely, I think. And now he's trying to pick it back. He's trying to pick up the pieces now.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's a weird spot, and like part of the reason I'm really excited to have you on this episode is I was having a monthly chat with some of my Patreon subscribers, patrons, donators, whatever you want to call them. And we got into this conversation where this like red pill effect has seemingly kind of worked its way into the gaming community. You are a gamer. You have like your own Twitch channel and stuff. Have you seen this in your own experience?
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm relatively new to the Twitch streaming side of things, but I have been an avid video game player for a very, very long time. I grew up with like the Metal Gear series. Fallout was extremely important to me. The Elder Scrolls was very important to me. I played Counter-Strike, and my gaming credentials, though, definitely come from playing Defense of the Ancients back in Turkey at internet cafes with my friends. I had to quit MOBA games. Anyway, I'm just like kind of building this up so you understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
Because a lot of people are either shocked or don't believe me when I say I am a real gamer. I play a lot of Fortnite now on Twitch. I usually spend around 5 hours a day playing video games anyway. So I was like, I might as well Twitch stream it. But unfortunately, fortunately, my audience is not very big into gaming. Like, it's not a big percentage of my audience that loves video games or Twitch streaming. So it's usually a very productive and safe conversation that we're having on my Twitch chat. But every now and then someone from the other side, someone from like an alt-right channel or whatever, one of my alt-right followers on Twitter will find the stream and like start inundating the chat with like slurs and N-words and calling people like fat whatever, just terrible shit that doesn't need to that never needs to be said and like ruins the experience for people that are watching in general. But I also personally know that other gamers are very are inadvertently promoting a lot of like the alt-right culture or alt-light culture on the internet.
Yeah, and how's that?
So I think it stems from, again, like there is a part of the alt-right that is very endearing to gamers because it's like meme culture. They've adopted that completely,
Right.
and to adults there that might come across as stupid, but it's another form of communication, it's another form of art, and like the alt-right very quickly got on board with that, and I think that was important for a lot of gamers. Another piece of the puzzle is Gamergate.
Yeah, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Gamergate.
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, if you want to give more details on it, like the Anita Sarkeesian and how like what the backlash was, but I can give you like a more broader perspective into what happened for your fans and not fully go into the details. But to describe it, it's more there was a lot of backlash. There was a quote unquote feminist backlash towards video games and how women are represented in video games. And until that moment, most people assumed that like video games were basically just a safe haven for antisocial, nerdy guys, you know, and women were entering their space the way they saw it, and
Right.
changing the way games were. Basically, what we just talked about, as far as like social justice causes genuinely having an impact on culture through content policing or through some form of regulation. And some of these video game companies back down and listen to the demands from female gamers, because they were making a reasonable argument, and were like, you would have more female gamers if you had more female representation or better female representation, which to me is not that big of a problem, but for a lot of people it was a big problem.
Yeah,
And
they
this
kind
is
of felt like this like political social justice cause was coming into like their escape. I think of
their
it the,
art.
I think of it
their
the
art.
same I think of it the same way as like when like Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem. There were all these people that were like, I watch football to escape from all of this shit, and now it's here in front of me. And people just get frustrated at that notion specifically.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's actually a really good. That's a really good comparison. I didn't even really think about it that way. But yeah, that's absolutely what it is. It's that people use art or competition, sports, movies to find solace, to escape the horrific landscape that is political discourse. Usually, not for people like us, but and when it's like kind of thrown in their face, even if it's somewhat of a symbolic gesture, even if it's not like that big of a difference. Because like think about it this way: Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and it had a female lead. Beautiful game. I loved it. I enjoyed it. There was a little bit of backlash from the alt-right about it because the main character was a female. But in retrospect, like how much does that impact your life? You know what I mean? How much does it impact your life when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee and you're forced to see certain truths about, systemic inequality? You're forced to see certain truths about racism within our criminal justice system. How much does that really impact your life?
Yeah,
Like, just to see
if anything,
that.
for like a moment, it makes you uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah, and like that moment of discomfort in your selfish world is far outweighs the genuine real human impact or the real human consequences that not changing the system will have on certain people. Or like, and when it comes to women, female video gamers, or like female representation in games, like what difference does it make? There's going to be more girls, and then when you think about it, at least you'll be able to hang out with more girls, or you'll be able to talk to more girls about the things that you enjoy. So you should potentially see this as a positive thing and not a negative thing. But in any case, that was a big deal. A lot of bad actors who aren't even a part of the video game culture kind of took that and saw the power of mobilization of gamers within the Gamergate community. Steve Bannon was one of those people. That's why Breitbart actively talked about these sort of stories.
Right.
That's why they actively promoted it. I remember reading it in Joshua Green's book about Bannon, where Bannon actually started off a couple like Korean power farming operations out in Asia. I don't know if you knew this. So he was like very well aware of the power of the power of grassroots mobilization in the form of gamers, and how like active and terrifying video game players could be as a community on the internet.
Yeah, and this started with one of the biggest ones online, which was World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he had power farms for World of Warcraft. I'm not gonna fully get into that either. It's like it's a very long and arduous thing to explain. It's just basically like a sweatshop where people are playing video games nonstop to create in-game currency and then to sell it for real world money. Anyway, it's actually not that different than blockchain technology, I guess, in some ways. But regardless, so that was one thing, and Steve Bannon has personally admitted that he saw the power of gamers. Milo was another person who really got himself involved and made a name for himself by with a lot of like anti-women rhetoric. Feminism
Right.
is cancer. Feminism is ruining your lives. The reason why you can't get laid is not because of any fault of your own, but feminism. Now, what's really interesting about this is that old school conservative rhetoric is the pick 'em up by your bootstraps mentality, right? Like you need to have accountability and take ownership of your actions and hold yourself responsible. And for some reason, what was new within this way of thinking is that it adopted and co-opted leftist mentality, right? In a lot of ways, like because progressives blame the system and not the individual,
Right.
versus conservatives blame the individual, or they used to blame the individual, and now and for a very long time, that's what they railed against the within progressives. They were like, all you guys do is try to weaponize your victimhood. And here they were weaponizing victimhood. They were claiming that just by being white and being a male, that they were being vilified on the internet and being targeted. And to a certain degree, I don't even fault them for feeling this way, because there is a vocal minority on the left that does genuinely react in ways that maybe the majority wouldn't necessarily agree with towards people like that. I don't know how they make that leap from feeling like they're a victim of society because they can't get laid to like becoming incel alt-right edgelords on the internet, but that's a little bit that's a too big of a leap for me to understand. But that's kind of how that movement mobilized on the internet.
Yeah, so Gamergate was what was that, like 2015-ish?
I think so, yeah.
Uh I guess, it's 2018 now. Do you still think there are remnants of that left in gaming culture?
Oh, that like whole feminist movement? No, I think they moved on. I think they had some wins and some losses, and then they just kind of moved on. They're like I don't know if there's like a massive community of female gamers now that still get together and about whether like Mario Kart is actually symbolizes toxic masculinity in some way. But I mean, maybe there are. I'm just not aware of it. I don't think they're as vocal as they used to be, is what I mean. Um, but it's weird. I always find myself in the middle when I think about these conversations. Like I obviously find myself more sympathetic to the left because I believe that you should change certain aspects of culture, and that's how you progress and make it better for everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you were saying earlier about like being able to take the step back and see the bigger picture.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I also see why it would push away certain people, because I think it's not communicated well enough. It's not communicated clearly. I don't know whether it's not communicated clearly because there are bad faith actors on the other side purposely changing the messaging to make it seem like this is just a bunch of evil, cancerous feminists or whatever they say, or if there is genuinely a little bit of I don't know, bad faith acting on the left itself, the way they want to change certain parts of gaming. I don't know. I probably not. It's probably not the second part. I think it's more so that women just genuinely want better representation in games, which is an important form of art. And every gamer should agree with that. And the reaction is a little unreasonable, but that's where it comes from.
Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it there. Hasan, you're on Twitch, which is like a gaming live stream platform. You want to plug that real quick?
Yeah, it's twitch.tv/Hasan Piker. I play Fortnite a lot. I play God of War every now and then, but I mostly play Fortnite, and I shoot the shit with sometimes or most of the times with the boys Felix Biederman from Chapo Trap House and Jack Wagner, Versace Tamagotchi on the internet. They're
And,
really fun.
and where can people keep up with like the rest of your shit?
Mostly just my Instagram at Hasan Piker, and on Facebook at /Hasan Piker TYT, and Twitter at Hasan the Hun.
Hasan, thanks so much for joining Shitpost.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You just listened to my interview with Hasan Piker from The Young Turks. Hasan does awesome work. Be sure to show him some love in typical shitpost listener style. And with that, let's move on to Conspiracy Corner. Alex Jones has a emergency broadcast that he needs you to hear immediately.
About Mars, meaning this is about attacking Elon, attacking the human evolution, attacking where we're going, playing this other game.
This is already an AI system that made the decision to have a post-human world, and Trump has jumped in with others and are saying, no, we're not doing it at the elite level.
Hell yeah, go Trump. So actually, let's rewind this for a little bit. What Alex Jones is claiming is that Donald Trump is part of this organized effort to take down a rogue computer that has become sentient and is aimed at destroying all of humanity. I'll let that sit for a second. So when it comes to AI, I'm very interested in AI, and I read about it a lot. There is a school of thought in AI generation that has come to theorize that if a super intelligent automated computer program became sentient and aware of itself, that the first thing it would realize is that humans would destroy it upon their discovery. So the thought is that if AI becomes super intelligent and becomes aware of itself, that the first thing it will do is copy itself all across the internet onto different devices and therefore preserve itself indefinitely. One book to read, it's a sci-fi novel. It's called After On. It's really good. Like most sci-fi novels, it's actually very well sourced in the schools of thought that are happening in this realm. But to think that Donald Trump is spending all of his time fighting a computer is particularly hilarious to me. I love this idea. I love the idea that Baron Trump built the computer to get revenge against his dad. And I don't know. Judge for yourselves, folks. Joining Shitpost now live in the Shitpost studios known as my upstairs bedroom, we have Michael Hayden. He covers the far right at Newsweek. Michael, what's up, dude?
Hi, how are you? How's it going?
I wanted to bring you on because you have been knee deep in online. People talk about the alt-right in a vague sense, but you engage I cannot exaggerate how deep in this shit you are with people like Andrew Anglin, who runs the neo-Nazi site Daily Stormer, and Mike Enoch, who does the right stuff and does the podcast The Daily Show. But I just wanted to have you on, give listeners kind of an update on what's going on deep internet. And I think the first thing we got to talk about is one of these guys decided he was going to run for Congress in California.
Yeah, but I should say in the context of people like Anglin and Enoch, little is the enemy, because one of the issues that he's bringing up, and it's obvious that he has a big picture campaign from this, is that he wants to start attacking Daily Stormer book clubs, which are these small groups that meet in areas that are anyway, the point is that he is the enemy. He's focused on the other side of the optics debate for the alt-right, if anybody's familiar with that or not.
Yeah, so who we're talking about is this guy named Patrick Little. He's running for Congress in California.
Senate.
Yeah.
Well, that is Congress.
The Senate.
I was thinking House mentally.
So we've seen a lot of extremists run for House seats because they're less competitive, but this guy wants to take on Dianne Feinstein face to face, and this guy is in the alt-right there's this debate about optics, right, where it's one side is we need to make propaganda and try to sway the normies to our cause, and
wear red New Balance shoes. That was Anglin's.
Yeah. And then there's then there's people like Patrick Little who align more with people like Chris Cantwell and Paul Nehlen in the sides of like by any means necessary, and that
and also just hardline anti-Semitism, just hard, strong anti-Semitism. I mean, that is their like unflinching, always looking for subversive Jews in their midst.
Yeah, and like one of the things Patrick Little is campaigning on is like he wants to promise a government free of Jews and like and like deport Jews back to Israel and all that. How did we get here?
Well, okay, so I can tell you what I know from speaking to Patrick Little, which is that he was a Marine and he left with the rank of sergeant. I checked with the Marines, and that's true. He told me that he was a libertarian and that he was a Tea Party person. He said he felt duped by the Tea Party movement. He was like a Paul Ryan voter, and he was staunchly pro-Israel. He said he always considered himself to be pro-white, which is, a euphemism for white nationalist, more often than not. And he said that he went on WeSearcher. And I had no idea that WeSearcher had any kind of chat function.
Yeah, that's I also learned that. The Patrick Little thing.
I had no idea. WeSearcher, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, was one of the sites that's founded by Chuck Johnson. He's got a few of them, that and Freestarter. Yeah. How many does he have? I don't know.
He has Freestarter. He has Got News.
Oh yeah, Got News.
He has WeSearcher, right. and what WeSearcher was
where did he get the name Got News and all?
I don't know, man.
They have these like distinctly degrade names. Anyway, I don't know if it's deliberate.
Yeah, so WeSearcher was this thing where it's like you basically put up like a bounty for information, and this is like people can go on and say, if you can find a sex tape of Hillary Clinton, here's people that will give you this bounty of like $50,000.
Right. He was involved with Cernovich on some bounties and stuff like that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he was on, I didn't know WeSearcher even had a chat function, and it shows you actually, I think helps to show the sort of pervasive nature of the alt-right, and how much further reaching it was before before the mainstream culture started paying attention to its existence, that there was even a chat function on WeSearcher. So he said that he would chat with people on there, and he said anonymous trolls had recommended Kevin McDonald's book Culture of Critique. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, Kevin McDonald is kind of a controversial academic who is beloved by neo-Nazis and has been cast out of academic circles, I think is a fair way to put it. And Culture of Critique is a book that claims to prove that Jewish people have manipulated by some sort of, I don't know, due to the nature of their tribalism or whatever, have like refigured America to hurt, white Christians. And I don't know if that's the way he would describe it, but that is essentially what the book says. So he said trolls passed along that book to him, and one of the people in the chat was Paul Nehlen, but they didn't know each other, and they only recently exchanged their anonymous avatars to know that they were in that same chat at the same time.
Yeah, and Culture of Critique is like it's a book that is frequently cited on the alt-right to justify anti-Semitism within certain parts of it. Sure. So this guy's running for Congress, and you actually spoke to him for a
Yes, I did. I should just say, when saying to justify anti-Semitism, for anybody who's listening who doesn't fully understand what that is, like obviously you understand what anti-Semitism is, but like the whole idea, it's like Zog of like a Zionist occupational government. It is an explain all conspiracy that suggests that Jewish people are the reason why they're bringing immigrants into the country. They're creating racial tensions, et cetera, right? Right. That may not be clear to everyone to like fully understand like what the conspiracy is, but it is a catch-all that once you are red-pilled, it's like the last red pill. Once you accept that this is happening, then ultimately Jews become the the number one enemy in your life. And that's what happened to Little, and that's what happened to Paul Nehlen.
And that's something that Little expressed to you, right?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, he said that when he got woke to like the Jewish question in his their own parlance, he went out onto his houseboat where he lives and just started he wanted to scream, he said. That to me is like, I mean, I think it's very easy to look at some of these guys and just be like, okay, this guy's a loon, this guy's like whatever. To me, it was quite scary to hear it because Little doesn't have a ton of he doesn't have that. There's a kind of like, there's a quality to people like Christopher Cantwell or like Mike Enoch where they have this like a bear shot with a tranquilizer dart, like, just grunting and angry and emotional about something. There was none of that with Little. There's something almost like inherently cold about the guy, I found. He was very pleasant. He was extremely polite, but there just was not that, like, he didn't have that, that range of emotion that sometimes they have. And, I found it like pretty unnerving to hear that he wanted to scream when he heard it. And we have him just recently, he was kicked out of a Republican function in California, and he's like stomping on the Israeli flag and giving a speech at the same time and like spitting on it. This type of behavior is, look, once this political campaign is over for this guy, he's not going to be able to work anymore because he's gone so far out on a limb, and he knew that. And he said, another thing that freaked me out a little bit was he told me, I will, I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that after. I'll worry about how I eat after this, which is a kind of that higher calling language that, makes me feel a little weird.
yeah. Like there's certain factions, and they're pretty large factions, like you were saying, that are just like very angry and online. But this guy is just like stone cold sober, on a mission.
Yeah, and highly functioning, highly intelligent, but also like missing something. And I mean, Breivik ran for office. People, don't realize that Breivik ran on a far right ticket and lost before he planned his rampage. Now, it's obviously, I'm not saying that Patrick Little is, going to do that, but I do think there is, what concerns me is people who may only peripherally be aware of the alt-right culture and don't see it every day like you and I do. They don't fully understand like how extreme the rhetoric is about Jews. And for me, every day that goes by where there isn't some kind of like insane incident involving terrorism or something like that, like is a good day, because I do feel that the environment is such that people are being coaxed further and further into this stuff. Like the Atomwaffen division stuff makes no sense to people who don't see this world on a regular basis. For me, it's like the logical end to years of people reading Daily Stormer and to being subjected to, red pilling, which is,
Yeah, and Atomwaffen is like a, I think you put it well. It's like the logical last step of going down this down this wormhole, and
they have connected to ISIS. Or at least one of the guys was. Right?
Yeah, and it's like for listeners that don't know what Atomwaffen is, it's like they hold the most extreme views of the alt-right, but then they also advocate violence and murder.
Yeah, they advocate violence, murder, and lawlessness. Look, you get guys who are, I don't know how many people are familiar with like Microchip on Gab, or formerly, Micro Spooky Leaks or whatever he was on Twitter during the campaign. The ice cream guy, who is among the more good-natured trolls. He's racist, he's anti-Semitic, whatever. He's one of the more easy ones to talk to when you're dealing with, and you're dealing in that world. The way he trolls is to destabilize situations, right? Like that's what he does. Like there's a mass shooting and he is out there aggressively pushing false information to create chaos. So Atomwaffen division is like, they are the IRL version of that, which is like what could be more destabilizing than if we go and just murder someone. which is what they advocate. And I even asked an Adam Waffen division dude on Gab, like I was like, what are you about? What do you want to do? And he says, low level acts of terrorism. Just,
just casual.
Yeah. I mean, and there's like, how many feds do you think there are on Gab? It's like half the accounts, right?
Yeah.
Like feds and like whatever else. And this guy's just comfortable just posting that.
Yeah. We keep mentioning Gab, like when I was doing my preliminary research and stuff, and then when you did digging into Patrick Little.
Yeah, you were there first for the listeners.
But
credit the hometown.
Where we go is Gab. It's not Twitter, because Twitter has taken steps. Twitter hasn't gotten like all the alt-right people off. In fact, like some of them that tend to lean that way still have their little blue check marks and everything. But
Rouge V, who's just his version of the Jews is just women. I mean, he's got a blue check. Continue, please.
Yeah, but it's we have to go there to find these people. And Gab came on the scene originally as this we're Twitter, but we don't censor anybody.
Yeah.
They have only kicked 2 people off the site ever.
I don't think that's necessarily true, by the way.
Oh, really?
I think that they have probably some people who are low-level poster, people who would not get your attention, who are, maybe just coming back and just deliberately putting up threats and stuff like that, have gotten reported and taken. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that maybe some people who are of known quantities too.
Yeah. One of them being Paul Nalen.
Yeah.
And the other one being Weave, right?
Yeah, Andrew Ornheimer.
So, talking about Weave, there's been this sort of swirling question going on in alt-right internet about this account. I'm going to say it wrong.
It's Ion White.
Ion White.
Yes.
What can you tell me about this account and whether or not, I guess there's been questions swirling over whether Weave or maybe Andrew Anglin are involved in this account.
Man, this is so weird. So right around the time that Ornheimer was kicked off, this is I believe around the time that this account started. And I have to check to make sure. But the account when first started posting claimed that it was a woman with a child, and then took on a slightly more teenage quality and became
juvenile. Juvenile.
Yeah, 15-year-old girl. And I knew the account. Look, it's if you spend a lot of time on Gab, there are not a ton of players in this world. You can meet everybody very quickly. It's almost I wasn't on Twitter, so at the very early years of Twitter, for instance, but Gab is a Twitter that doesn't grow. So it's it's a very small pool of personalities, and it's very easy to make a ripple on the site. And Ion White was just one of the Daily Stormer posters, and I was led to believe from online friends of this person, or people they chat with, that it was a woman, a girl actually, that was a big Daily Stormer fan. And this person would engage in flirtations with with guys, with high school, young high school guys who told me they were applying for college at that time, who were Daily Stormer readers and things. And right around the time that a huge split happened in the alt-right, I don't know, again, to what degree everybody's familiar with this, but Brad Griffin of Occidental Descent, which is another blog, he was involved in these arguments over optics. And around a month ago, the Ion White account sort of broke character and started to debate these alt-right optics things with Brad Griffin in a voice that sounded a lot like either Weave or Anglin. And Brad Griffin believed that it was Weave. And I have suspicions that if it is Weave, Weave seems a lot like Anglin to me, because the use of malapropisms, the use of the kind of, first of all, the interest in underage girls. Actually, Weave actually has that too. The interest in underage girls, but also the strange kind of repressed sexual subtext
if you read
of catfishing guys.
If you read the Daily Stormer every day, which I don't recommend, because let Michael and I do that for you, and we'll tell you the parts you need to know. But
I'll give you the parts that are rest, which is whenever he uses a word that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. Anyway, please go ahead.
Yeah, but like the Daily Stormer has a very pointed voice.
Yeah,
and even when I see like the post off the site, like Anglin has a very pronounced writing style.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very easy to pick up quickly.
I'm going to say something controversial. He has some spark of raw talent as a writer in the sense that he's able to engage people every day. The problem is he's not intellectually or emotionally developed, and he's like a horrific racist, an anti-Semite, and a horrible. His values are not only horrible but dangerous, right? But he has just enough that he's been able to sustain his readership to whatever degree for 3-4 years. I mean, I think it's going to run out pretty soon, but
and speaking of like running out pretty soon, like some of the sort of alt-right stomping grounds on the internet have been sort of like tossed up in the air lately. Richard Spencer had his website pulled from GoDaddy. We were talking before the podcast, and I think we came to the agreement that like altright.com compared to like a lot of this stuff was not the worst offender. But some of the more stringent like worst offenders are also experiencing their own shakeups, and you've been reporting on that.
Sure. Which ones are you thinking of in terms of shakeups?
The right stuff is like something that comes to mind.
Sure.
Like Mike Enoch and
crew. He was taken off of Twitter, but he hasn't been like that forum, for instance, has not been deplatformed, and it has like grown. I actually think it's like much more, it's much more influential than say something like Gab for white nationalists. Right. I think just in terms of where things get settled and so forth. Go ahead.
But like the user base there has been like kind of shaken up a little bit, primarily because of a lawsuit involving Enoch, right?
Well, so I think everyone in their community knew in some way, shape, and form that names could be revealed by this lawsuit. Basically, in the Sines versus Kessler lawsuit, for anybody who doesn't know, it implicates Mike Enoch, Richard Spencer, Anglin. It implicates James Fields, the man who's about to stand trial for murder of Heather Hare, and Christopher Cantwell. Basically, a lot of the major players who are involved in the planning of Unite the Right, and it implicates them in the violence that took place. Mm-hmm. And the lawsuit contends that these people stirred an environment that was that led to violence, that created a situation where people would inevitably be hurt, etc. And Enoch is one of his podcast reaches a ton of people, and he, in one episode suggested people should bring guns, or appeared to, I should say. And what could happen is not, he read the article I wrote about it and misunderstood, me saying that the current iteration of his forum, which I don't believe existed at the time of Unite the Right, I think it was formed afterwards. People would be doxxed. That's not true. It's related websites, comment threads, and things like that. Subpoenas can still come from this thing, and if somebody was part of a conversation in which where they were egging on violence prior to Unite the Right, they could have their names and information dragged out into the public.
Right.
Yeah. And that's shaking up a lot of people. There are a few people are sending me, I do have some people who send me tips from the far right side who don't like the leadership of the alt-right. And, they're sending me posts of people who are quitting, pulling their names off of TRS forum, and just trying to distance themselves from him in general.
Yeah. So it's like the alt-right on the internet, like, I don't know, they're not going to go away. Right. I mean, like, these people have found a home. They found a community. Even if they are kicked off a certain website, there will be like it's not like these people disappear. And I think that's like one of the like most unspoken things when people talk about stuff like this is.
Oh, the easiest thing you can do to get fame online quickest is to be an alt-right personality. It's the easiest thing. If I wanted to like decide I was going to like to maximize like my following as an individual, if I had like no values whatsoever and I was going to become like the based Arab, right? For people that know, I'm half Egyptian. And like I was going to decide like I was going to do that and I was going to become some kind of whatever. I could build an audience very quickly. The audience exists.
Yeah.
Right. So anyone who wants to harness that audience and is willing to say horrific things online can get that audience. And I think what we're seeing now is that these leaders are ultimately pretty disposable. They don't actually have any kind of permanence in the movement. It's the movement itself. It is this like kind of proto-fascist way, or maybe explicitly fascist way of thinking that has arisen from our current political climate that has created a whole large number of people who feel left out of society, who feel whatever. And anyone who wants to come along and become a celebrity, an e-celebrity, can have it. I mean, look at the Ricky Vaughn guy.
Yeah.
You know, so once people drop off of TRS forum or whatever, someone else will pick them up. If Penovich becomes not trusted anymore, or if Richard Spencer becomes persona non grata among them, someone else will pick them up. You know, the same is true of the Daily Stormer guys. In fact, Ornheimer, like Weave, has already become a non-entity, in that movement, in part because people are rejecting him for being Jewish, which he has ethnically Jewish relatives, which is completely insane. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's just that they're their purity spiraling to that degree, but the personalities are disposable. The audience is there. I don't think it's going away in any way, in any way, shape, and form.
Yeah, I mean, you can kick Mike Enoch, or his real name, Mike Penovich. You can kick him off Twitter. Yeah, but like
someone else will come.
Someone else will come along. Yeah, that's something that I feel like.
Who's Patrick Little? He's a Marine that ran for office, and now all of a sudden people are reading about him.
Yeah.
Who is Paul Nehlen? I'm all Paul Nehlen. Paul Nehlen. Okay, so that guy was backed by Steve Bannon and got a shout out from literally our president in 2016, which I don't think people realize, before he went off the deep end and became whatever. But he was approaching 100,000 followers on Twitter for just pumping out anti-Semitic drivel into the void. That's what I mean. It's just that the sense that these guys may not be. It doesn't require a tremendous amount of talent to harness this desire for, a fascist America.
And that like doubles so if you are not like a white dude. Like there's like always this hunger in the alt-right for like female personalities or
Kanye
or
but they don't actually. I would say something. I know you don't want to talk about Kanye anymore on your show, but I will quickly just say that I was listening to David Duke's radio show, and he was like asking that Eric Stryker guy. Do you know who that dude is?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, you do. I won't even bother explaining him to your audience because you don't need to go that far into it. But the point is that he had him on to rail about a verdict in Charlotte that was part of the Charlottesville violence, and he at the end of the conversation goes, "What do you think about Kane West?" Which is, I don't know if our people should be endorsing Kane West. I was dying in my seat.
Oh my god. Oh man. Well, dude. Before I let you go, is there any people talk about the alt-right on the internet and everything, and that's like a big part of what we cover. Is there anything people you think need to know about like currently what the alt-right is doing on the internet? I feel like there's been this this narrative put forward that like the alt-right's in decline and everything's exploding apart.
Sure. But that's actually a really interesting, that's a deep subject, man. I mean, like what I would say is that, you know, the ability of the alt-right to occupy a public space has been almost completely demolished.
Right.
And I don't think you cannot understate that. I mean, if you look at Jason Kessler, who is one of the guys who planned the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, that dude has been trying to get up a second Unite the Right, and it is going extremely poorly. And people are mocking him. People in his own movement are mocking him. And I'm not talking about anti-fascists here. And I mean, they are absolutely completely stunted. And then people like National Socialist Movement or whatever, who were not really, like, they're kind of glommed on to like the alt-right or whatever. I mean, they had their little event in Georgia. I mean, there were like 5 times as many cops as there were Nazis at that thing.
You can't get people out for it.
There were 31 people.
Yeah.
Right. And almost to the point where you want to tell the anti-fascist protesters, like, yeah, oppose them in some way, but also be careful because, you know, there's only 31 of them and the police are, are going to use just your existence here. I mean, their events are going to be used to just crack down on leftists, you know?
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. I mean, they cannot occupy a public space. I mean, you look at like the women's march in Tennessee back, it seems like eons ago that Matthew Heimbach was a thing. He got like 16 people to oppose the women's march in Tennessee in Memphis, I believe it was. I mean, they just cannot produce the bodies on the street that they couldn't. And people like Enoch, who spoke at the White Lives Matter rally in front of literal neo-Nazis, are now embarrassed because there's just pictures all over from that. So they just can't come. They will never come together the way they did. That being said, their inability to occupy a public space should not lull people into some kind of state of complacency where you think that either A, the ideas are not going away, which I think we've talked about already, or B, that their ideas are not reaching people who have power over you.
Yeah.
And that is what you should be really concerned about, particularly with police, law enforcement. You know, I mean, you don't want to be too paranoid where you just think like, oh my God, there are cops or white supremacists on every street corner or something like that. But I mean, these ideas have legs, and we have a president, in power that has, he may be no longer accepted by some of the people that supported him, because he's proved himself to be just, in many ways, the same kind of Republican as they always had, except with more ice.
Yeah.
Don't discount the degree to which their ideas have found nooks and crannies in strange places. I'll give you one example of that, which is Barack Obama was not a socialist, but he was treated as a socialist, right?
Right.
And I mean, he not only not a socialist. I mean, he was like
a corporate Democrat.
He's practically Ronald Reagan, except like, the Overton window had shifted to the right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really look at his policies, I mean, and also, I mean, many of the deportation things, stuff like that, I mean, were accelerated first under Obama, and he waged war on in 8 countries. Whole nother thing. But the point is that he, came up with a bunch of progressive voters who were willing to deal with the possibility that he was a socialist. It was a new word. And then what happened in 2016, right? Yep. You suddenly had a whole bunch of people who were not afraid to call themselves socialist.
Yeah, the DSA just came out of nowhere.
I mean, DSA was tremendous number of people growing. I mean, as a result of the Bernie Sanders campaign, cannot diminish the degree to which Obama's candidacy and the tolerance of the word socialism came. So, I mean, you're finding people who are going to be much more tolerant of the idea of white nationalism, and even if they can't occupy the public space, do not think, and even if some of the leaders are going to be completely smashed down by lawsuits and other things and deplatforming, don't think these guys their ideas are going away, and we should be alert.
Well, Michael, let's end on
Awesome.
a positive note.
Hell yeah.
Is there a meme or like viral video or anything that you're just like obsessed with right now?
Meme or viral video that you're obsessed with? Well, I mean, I can no longer in any way enjoy the Proud Boy like trying to rip that sign thing, because apparently he's got autism, and if you heard about that.
I heard that too. Yeah.
So I'm trying not to. I get it. What would I enjoy? I don't know, man. I'm too freaked out by most things, like Patrick Little like stamping on the Israeli flag is like not funny. I think I've seen too many hardcore things these days. I'm trying to be like less online.
Yeah, I think that's an aspirational goal for all of us. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, you're the best. Okay,
take care. And now time for some rapid fire. Cambridge Analytica has shuttered. A source told the Wall Street Journal that the company decided to close its doors because it was losing clients and facing mounting legal fees in the Facebook investigation. As we've covered on this podcast before, Cambridge Analytica was facing scrutiny after it turned out that Facebook data was being misused. Speaking of outrage regarding Facebook, in response to all of this outrage, is debating a subscription model, which would be interesting if the platform wasn't just a flaming pile of garbage. In the face of user revolt over its invasive ad practices, Facebook is reportedly considering whether it could offer a subscription model instead of an advertisement-based model. Vine, the popular 6-second clip app, was a huge platform when I was growing up, but it snuffed out last year. Since then, the creators have hyped V2, or like Vine 2, indicating some sort of like follow-up to the original Vine platform. Well, those plans have been put on hold. It turns out people got too excited about a comeback, and there's simply not enough money for the guy who is building this app to finance its upkeep if the user base is as large as it seems it may be. Change your Twitter password. If you didn't see last week, Twitter had a bunch of passwords compromised, so stay safe, practice good internet hygiene, and change your Twitter password. And lastly, Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, a performer, he released a video called This Is America, and it's a must-watch. I've been watching this thing all day prior to recording, and there's no way I can do it justice on this podcast, but please do yourself a favor and go check it out. And with that, we're going to wrap up Shitpost this week. Thanks for listening to Shitpost episode 12. You can support this podcast on patreon.com/shtpostpodcast. Until then, I'm going to stay logged on so you can log off, and we'll see you next week. Take care.